The alarm clock screamed at 6 a.m., but David barely heard it. He'd been staring at the ceiling for hours, watching the shadows dance across the water stain that had been growing bigger each week. His tiny apartment felt like a prison cell, and the walls seemed to close in more every day. He rolled out of bed and stepped over the pile of bills scattered on the floor. Electric company, phone company, rent notice, all stamped with angry red letters. His ex-wife had taken half of everything in the divorce, and what little remained was disappearing fast. The construction job at the downtown site barely paid enough to cover his basic needs. David splashed cold water on his face and looked in. The cracked bathroom mirror, 32 years old, and he felt like he already lived a lifetime of disappointments. His beard had grown scraggly, and his eyes looked tired. When had he become this person? When had his dreams shrunk down to just hoping he could pay rent next month? The walk to the job site took 40 minutes because he couldn't afford bus fare. Detroit streets looked as broken as he felt. Empty buildings stared back at him like hollow eyes, and the few people he passed seemed to be carrying their own heavy burdens. Everyone was struggling. Everyone was just trying to survive another day. At the construction site, his supervisor barely looked up when David clocked in. Foundation work today, the man grunted. Same as yesterday. David picked up his tools and got to work, his muscles moving automatically while his mind wandered to better times. He used to love building things, creating something solid and lasting. Now it felt like he was just going through the motions. During lunch break, David sat alone on a stack of concrete blocks, eating a sandwich made from day-old bread. The other workers talked about their weekend plans, but David had nowhere to go and nothing to do. His phone buzzed with another text from his landlord asking about late rent. He ignored it and opened the internet instead, mindlessly scrolling through job listings. Most of the ads were for positions that paid even less than his current job. Some required college degrees he didn't have. Others were clearly scams promising easy money. He was about to close the browser when something caught his eye. It was different from the usual postings, cleaner, more professional looking. New Eden Colony seeks human males for permanent settlement, free housing, guaranteed employment, and companionship arrangements available. Apply today for a chance at a new life among the stars. David read it 3 times. A colony in space? It sounded like something from a science fiction movie, but the website looked legitimate, with official documents and government stamps. There were photos of a beautiful settlement built into a canyon, with clean buildings and happy people of different species working together. The application process was more detailed than anything he'd ever seen. They wanted to know everything about his background, his skills, his health, even his relationship history. There were psychological tests that asked strange questions about his comfort level with different cultures and his willingness to adapt to new environments. One section made him pause. Are you open to non-traditional relationship arrangements? As part of cultural integration, he wasn't sure what that meant, but at this point, what did he have to lose? His marriage had failed anyway. Maybe traditional wasn't working for him. David spent his evening filling out forms and uploading documents. The whole process felt surreal. Was he really applying to leave Earth and start over on some alien world? 2 weeks ago, his biggest worry was whether he could afford groceries. Now he was answering questions about his genetic history and his willingness to learn alien languages. The response came faster than he expected. A woman named Dr. Reynolds contacted him through an encrypted video call. She had kind eyes and spoke in a calm, professional voice that made David feel like maybe this wasn't a scam after all. Congratulations, David. Your application has been selected for the next phase of review. I need to explain what you're signing up for because it's important that you understand the full situation. Dr. Reynolds told him about New Eden Colony, a joint settlement between humans and alien species. The colony was thriving, but they had a serious problem. Not enough human men were willing to make the journey. The alien populations were stable, but without more human males, the entire experiment might fail. We're offering more than just a job and a home, she explained. We're offering you a chance to be part of something bigger, to help bridge the gap between different species and cultures. But it requires sacrifice and openness to new ways of living." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "The colony has arranged partnerships program. You would be introduced to potential alien partners who are specifically interested in human companions. It's completely voluntary, but it's part of how we're building a stable, integrated community." David felt his heart racing. Alien partners? This was getting more surreal by the minute. But as he looked around his cramped apartment, at the bills and the broken dreams, he realized he was already living in a kind of alien world. A world where he felt completely alone and out of place. "What exactly would I be doing there?" he asked. "You'd be supervising construction projects. Your skills are exactly what we need. You'd have your own home, designed to accommodate both human and alien family members. You'd be learning new languages, new customs, new ways of thinking about relationships and community." The call ended with Dr. Reynolds giving him a week to decide. David spent the next few days walking around Detroit, looking at his life from every angle. He visited the park where he used to play as a child, now littered with trash and broken glass. He drove past the house where he lived with his ex-wife, now occupied by strangers. Everything that had once felt permanent and solid had crumbled away. On the last day, David sat in his apartment as the power got shut off again. He used the last of his phone battery to send his acceptance message. Whatever was waiting for him on New Eden Colony, it had to be better than slowly dying in this place. The transport ship would leave in 2 months. David used that time to sell everything he owned, which wasn't much. He said goodbye to the few friends he had left, though most of them thought he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. Maybe that was exactly what he needed. Standing in the spaceport, holding a single bag with all his possessions, David felt something he hadn't experienced in years. He felt hope. Not the desperate hope of a drowning man, but the real thing, the possibility that somewhere out there, among the stars, he might find the life he was meant to live. As the transport ship lifted off, David watched Earth shrink away below him. For the first time in months, he smiled. He was finally going home, even if he didn't know what home would look like yet. The journey to New Eden Colony took 6 months, but David didn't mind. For the first time in years, he had time to think without worrying about rent or bills. The transport ship was comfortable, with clean rooms and good food. He shared meals with other men who had made the same choice he did, each with their own story of leaving Earth behind. There was Tom, a former teacher who lost his job when the school district closed. He spent his days reading everything he could find about alien cultures. Then there was Robert, an older man whose wife had passed away, leaving him with nothing but memories. He was quiet most of the time, but sometimes he'd share stories about his life that made David realize he wasn't the only one starting over. The ship's library had courses in basic alien languages. David struggled with the clicking sounds of Valorian speech, but he found the musical tones of Zephyrian easier to understand. The other passengers helped each other practice, turning the long journey into something like going back to school. As they got closer to New Eden, David started having doubts. What if he made a terrible mistake? What if these alien women didn't like him? What if he couldn't adapt to their ways? But every time he thought about turning back, he remembered his empty apartment in Detroit and pushed the fears aside. The day they arrived, David pressed his face against the window and couldn't believe what he saw. New Eden Colony wasn't some rough frontier settlement. It was beautiful. The buildings were built into the side of a massive canyon with flowing curves that reminded him of water and strong geometric patterns that spoke of permanence and strength. Above them, a huge gas giant hung in the sky like a painted moon, casting everything in soft, colorful light. The landing area was busy with people of all 3 species working together. Humans in familiar work clothes stood next to tall, graceful beings with pale blue skin and others with golden skin who moved with confident energy. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, and nobody looked unhappy to be there. Dr. Reynolds met David at the landing platform. She looked older than she had in the video calls, but her smile was warm and genuine. "Welcome to New Eden, David. I hope you're ready for this." She led him through the colony, pointing out the medical center, the workshops, the schools where children of all species learn together. The air was clean and fresh, nothing like the smog he'd breathed in Detroit. People nodded and smiled as they passed, making David feel welcome even though he was clearly the newcomer. "Your home is up here," Dr. Reynolds said, leading him up a path carved into the canyon wall. "It's designed to accommodate human preferences, but with spaces for potential alien family members. We'll let you settle in before the introductions tomorrow." The house took David's breath away. It was 3 times bigger than his old apartment, with large windows that looked out over the canyon. The furniture was comfortable and well-made. There was a kitchen with appliances he actually recognized, a bedroom with a real bed, and even a small workshop area where he could work on projects. But what really caught his attention were the other spaces. A circular room with soft lighting and strange, beautiful plants that seemed to glow with their own light, and another room with sturdy workbenches and tools he'd never seen before, all organized with mathematical precision. "The garden room is designed for Zephyrian meditation practices," Dr. Reynolds explained. "The workshop follows Valorian principles of efficiency and strength. If you choose to form partnerships, these spaces will help your potential partners feel at home." That night, David lay in his new bed, staring out at the gas giant rising over the canyon. Tomorrow he would meet the 2 alien women who had requested to be matched with him. He'd seen their files during the journey, but reading about someone and meeting them were completely different things. Zara was a Zephyrian scientist who studied the unique plants that grew on the moon. She was described as thoughtful and gentle, with abilities that David didn't quite understand. The file mentioned something about telepathic communication, which both fascinated and terrified him. Kira was a Valorian engineer who led maintenance crews keeping the colony's systems running. Her file painted a picture of someone strong and direct, who valued practical skills and honest work. That sounded more familiar to David, but he wondered if he'd be strong enough for someone from a culture that prized physical capability. The next morning, David dressed in his best clothes and tried to calm his nerves. Dr. Reynolds had arranged for the meetings to happen in the colony's community center, with plenty of other people around to keep things comfortable. The formal introduction process was designed to take pressure off everyone involved. When David walked into the meeting room, he saw them both waiting. Zara was tall and elegant, with silver hair that seemed to move in an invisible breeze. Her skin was pale blue, like morning sky, and her eyes were a deep violet that seemed to see right through him. She moved with a grace that made David feel clumsy just watching her. Kira was shorter, but powerfully built, with golden skin that seemed to glow with health and energy. Her amber eyes sparkled with intelligence and humor. She wore practical work clothes that showed she wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. When she smiled, David felt some of his nervousness fade away. The introductions were awkward at first. David had practiced basic greetings in both languages, but his pronunciation was terrible. Zara seemed amused by his attempts at Zephyrian, while Kira corrected his Valorian with good-natured directness. Both women spoke excellent English, which helped, but David could tell they were being polite by not using their native languages. Dr. Reynolds guided them through structured conversations about their backgrounds, interests, and hopes for the future. David learned that Zara had volunteered for the program because she believed that mixing different species would create something beautiful and new. Kira had applied because she respected human ingenuity and wanted to learn from their practical, problem-solving approach. The most surprising thing was how different they were from each other. Zara spoke quietly and thoughtfully, choosing her words carefully. She seemed to be listening to something beyond the conversation, and David wondered if she was reading his thoughts. Kira was direct and energetic, asking questions about his construction work and sharing stories about her own projects. As the afternoon wore on, David began to relax. These weren't monsters or strange creatures from a science fiction movie. They were people, just like him, looking for connection and companionship. They had hopes and fears, dreams and disappointments. When the formal meeting ended, both women seemed genuinely interested in getting to know him better. They made plans to meet again the next day, this time in more casual settings. Zara invited him to see her laboratory, while Kira suggested they visit one of the construction sites where David would be working. Walking home that evening, David felt something he hadn't experienced in years. He felt wanted, not just needed for his skills or tolerated for his presence, but actually wanted for who he was. Both women had looked at him with genuine interest, as if they saw something in him that he'd forgotten was there for the first time since arriving. David allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he really could build a new life here among the stars. David's first day at work felt like stepping into a dream. The construction site was unlike anything he'd ever seen on Earth. Humans worked alongside aliens, each bringing their own skills and methods to the project. The Valorians could lift heavy beams that would normally require machinery, while the Zephyrians had an uncanny ability to sense structural weaknesses before they became problems. His supervisor, a friendly human named Alex, showed him around the site. The secret here is learning to blend everyone's strengths, Alex explained. Your job isn't just about building. You're helping 3 different species learn to work as one team. David found himself naturally falling into the role of translator, not just of languages, but of working styles. When the Valorian crew wanted to rush ahead with raw strength, he'd suggest they wait for the Zephyrian engineers to double-check the plans. When the Zephyrians spent too long contemplating every detail, he'd encourage them to trust the Valorian instincts for what felt right. By the end of his first week, David realized something amazing. He was good at this. Not just the construction work, but the people part. For the first time in years, he felt truly useful. His co-workers respected his opinions, and even the alien crew members seemed to trust his judgment. The evening visits with Zara and Kira became the highlight of each day. With Zara, everything was peaceful and thoughtful. She would take him to different parts of the colony, showing him plants that glowed with soft light and explaining how they helped purify the air. Her laboratory was full of growing things David had never imagined, each one serving a purpose. In the colony's ecosystem, my people believe that all life is connected. Zara told him one evening as they walked through her garden. When we came here, we didn't want to just survive. We wanted to become part of this world. She touched a flowering vine that sparkled like stars. These plants talk to each other, share nutrients, warn each other of danger. We're learning to be part of that conversation. David was fascinated by her gentle wisdom. When she spoke, he felt calmer, more centered. Sometimes, when she was explaining something complex, he would catch glimpses of images in his mind that weren't his own thoughts. The first time it happened, he jumped in surprise. "I'm sorry," Zara said quickly. "I didn't mean to share thoughts without permission. It's natural for my people. But I know humans find it strange." "It's not strange," David said, though his heart was racing. "It's just new." "Can you really read my mind?" Zara smiled softly. "Not read. Exactly. More like feeling what you feel. When you're happy, I can sense that happiness. When you're worried, I feel that too. It's how we connect with each other." The idea should have terrified him, but instead, David found it oddly comforting. For so long, he'd felt completely alone with his thoughts and feelings. The possibility of sharing them with someone who could truly understand was both exciting and scary. His time with Kira was completely different. She was all energy and movement, always working on some project or another. Her workshop was a maze of tools and half-finished inventions, each one designed to make life in the colony easier or more efficient. Humans are incredible problem solvers, Kira told him as they worked together on repairing a water recycling system. Your people see a challenge and immediately start thinking of 10 different ways to fix it. My people are strong, but we sometimes get stuck doing things the same way our ancestors did. David watched her work with admiration. Her hands moved with confident precision, and she seemed to understand exactly how every component fit together. When she encountered a problem, She would attack it with focused determination until she found a solution. "You're pretty amazing at problem-solving yourself," David said, passing her a tool she needed. Kira grinned. "We make a good team. You think differently than I do. But when we put our ideas together, we come up with things neither of us could have managed alone." Working with Kira made David feel strong and capable. She never treated him like he was fragile or needed protection. Instead, she challenged him to keep up with her pace and trusted him to handle important tasks. Her confidence in him helped him rediscover confidence in himself. The strangest part was watching Zara and Kira become friends. David had expected them to be rivals, competing for his attention. Instead, they seemed genuinely interested in each other's cultures and work. Sometimes he would find them having long conversations about colony life, sharing stories, and laughing together. "Is this normal?" David asked Dr. Reynolds during one of their weekly check-ins. "I mean, them getting along so well." Dr. Reynolds smiled. "It's actually ideal. The most successful partnerships we've seen involve all parties respecting and caring for each other. You're not just choosing between them, David. You're all building something together." That night, David lay in bed thinking about what Dr. Reynolds had said. He'd been approaching this like his old life, where he had to choose one path and stick to it. But maybe this new world had different rules. Maybe he didn't have to choose at all. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Back on Earth, he'd been taught that love was supposed to be simple. One person, one relationship, one set of rules. But nothing about his new life was simple, and maybe that was okay. During his second month at the colony, David began to notice changes in himself. He was sleeping better, eating better, smiling more. The constant worry that had plagued him on Earth was fading away. He had work that mattered, a home that felt safe, and people who genuinely cared about him. One evening, as he sat in his garden room watching the gas giant rise over the canyon, both Zara and Kira came to visit at the same time. Instead of the awkwardness he expected, the three of them fell into easy conversation. They talked about their work, their hopes for the colony, and their memories of their home worlds. "I never thought I'd be happy again," David admitted as they watched the alien stars come out. "Back on Earth, I felt like I was just surviving, day after day. Here, I feel like I'm actually living." Zara reached out and gently touched his hand. "That's because you're becoming who you were meant to be. Sometimes we have to travel very far to find our true selves." Kira nodded in agreement. "The colony changes everyone who comes here. We all become something new, something better than we were before." As David looked at both women, he realized that his feelings for them weren't a problem to be solved or a choice to be made. They were a gift, something precious that had grown naturally from friendship and respect into something deeper. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had found where he belonged. The alarm that woke David wasn't his usual morning call. Red lights flashed through his bedroom window, and the colony's emergency system was broadcasting urgent messages in 3 languages. He grabbed his clothes and rushed outside to find chaos. In the usually peaceful streets, power station is under attack. Alex shouted as David reached the construction site. "Some kind of space pirates. They're trying to destroy our main energy source. The whole colony depended on that power station. Without it, life support systems would fail within days." David's training kicked in automatically. He'd handled emergencies on construction sites before, but nothing like this. The colony's defense forces were fighting off the attackers, but the power station needed immediate repairs to prevent a complete shutdown. "We need teams at 3 different locations," announced Commander Torres, the colony's security chief. "Structural repairs, electrical systems, and backup power activation. This has to happen fast." David found himself volunteering to lead the structural repair team. As he organized his crew of humans and aliens, he saw Kira running toward them with a bag full of engineering tools. "The main support beam is damaged," she said, breathing hard. "If it collapses, the whole station goes down. I know how to fix it, but I need someone who understands human construction methods." To help, working together, David and Kira made their way through the damaged facility, Sparks flew from broken electrical systems, and the sound of fighting echoed from outside. But David felt strangely calm. This was what he was good at, fixing things under pressure. There, Kira pointed to a massive beam that was cracked and sagging. We need to support it while I weld the fracture. Can your team handle that? David looked at the beam, calculating angles and weight distribution in his head. We can do it, but someone needs to coordinate between the human and Valorian crews. Our lifting techniques are different. As they worked, David heard a voice. In his mind, not his own thoughts, but something gentle and familiar. It was Zara, somehow communicating with him across the colony. David, I can sense the structural stress patterns through the colony's bio-network. The beam you're working on is stable, but there's another weakness developing in Section 7. You need to reinforce it before it fails. The telepathic communication should have been distracting, but instead it felt like having an extra set of eyes. Zara guided him to problems before they became disasters, while Kira's engineering expertise told him exactly how to fix them. For 3 hours, the three of them worked as a perfect team. David coordinated the repair crews, Kira handled the technical fixes, and Zara provided early warning about structural problems. By the time the all-clear signal sounded, they had saved the power station and possibly the entire colony sitting. Exhausted in the aftermath, David realized something important had happened. Not just the successful defense of their home, but the way he, Zara, and Kira had worked together. They weren't three separate people anymore. They were a team, a unit that was stronger together than any of them could be alone. We did good work today, Kira said, wiping grease from her hands. I couldn't have managed those repairs without both of you. Zara nodded, looking tired but satisfied. The bio-network was showing me things I never could have seen on my own. When we connected our abilities, everything became clearer. Over the following weeks, the three spent more and more time together. What had started as separate courtship visits became group activities. They would work on projects together, share meals, and talk late into the night about their hopes and dreams. David found himself falling in love with both women, but in completely different ways. With Zara, he felt peaceful and understood. Her gentle nature calmed his worried mind, and her telepathic abilities let them share emotions in ways he'd never experienced. When she was happy, he could feel that happiness like warm sunlight. When she was sad, he wanted nothing more than to comfort her. With Kira, he felt energized and strong. Her confidence in him made him believe he could accomplish anything. Working alongside her on technical projects, he discovered skills he didn't know he had. Her laughter made him laugh, and her determination inspired him to push harder than he ever had before. But the situation was becoming complicated in ways David hadn't expected. Colony regulations said he needed to make his choice soon. The trial partnership period was supposed to last only 3 months, and he was already halfway through. I don't understand the problem, Tom said when David confided in his friend. You've got 2 amazing options. Pick one and be happy. But it wasn't that simple. David wasn't choosing between 2 job offers or 2 apartments. He was choosing between 2 people he cared about, 2 different futures, 2 different versions of himself. The pressure got worse when other colonists started paying attention to his situation. Some were supportive, saying that his happiness was what mattered most. Others worried that his indecision was setting a bad example for future rivals. The colony council is getting nervous, Dr. Reynolds told him during one of their meetings. You're being watched by people back on Earth who are deciding whether to support our program. If this doesn't work out well, it could affect funding for the entire colony. David felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He wasn't just making a personal choice anymore. The future of New Eden Colony might depend on his decision. That night, David sat in his garden room, staring out at the gas giant and trying to make sense of his feelings. Both Zara and Kira deserved someone who could love them completely, without reservation or doubt. But how could he choose between them when each one brought out different parts of his personality? Just as he was sinking into despair, he heard soft footsteps outside. Zara and Kira appeared at his door, looking as troubled as he felt. We need to talk, Kira said. All three of us, together, they sat in the garden room, surrounded by the glowing plants that Zara had taught him to care for a long moment. Nobody spoke. Finally, Zara broke the silence. David, we know you're struggling with this decision. We can both feel your confusion and pain. Kira nodded. We've been talking to each other about the situation a lot, and we want you to know that whatever you decide, we'll support you. David felt tears forming in his eyes. That's just it. I don't want to decide. I care about both of you, and I can't imagine my life without either one of you in it. The two women exchanged glances. What if you didn't have to choose? Zara asked quietly. David looked up in surprise. What do you mean? In my culture, Kira explained, family units don't always follow the same patterns as human traditions. Sometimes three people, or even more, can build a life together if they all care for each other. Among my people as well, Zara added, love isn't always limited to two individuals. When three hearts beat in harmony, it can create something beautiful. David stared at them both, hardly daring to hope. Are you saying what I think you're saying? We're saying, Kira replied, with a smile, that maybe it's time to stop thinking like Earth people and start thinking like New Eden people. David spent the next 3 days thinking about what Zara and Kira had suggested. A three-way partnership. It sounded impossible, but then again, 6 months ago the idea of living on an alien world had seemed impossible to. Maybe impossible was just another word for something he hadn't experienced yet. He walked through the colony, watching other families go about their daily lives. There were human couples, alien couples, and some mixed partnerships between different species. Everyone seemed to have found their own way of making relationships work in this new world. On the third evening, David made his decision. He invited both women to dinner at his house, determined to be completely honest about his feelings. He cooked a simple meal using ingredients from Zara's garden and recipes that Kira had taught him. The table was set for 3, and for the first time, that felt exactly right. I've been thinking about what you both said. David began as they shared the meal. About not having to choose between you. I want to try it, if you're both willing. But I need to know this is really what you want, not just something you're doing to make me happy. Zara smiled softly. David, my people believe that love grows stronger when it's shared, not weaker. When I see how happy Kira makes you, it makes me happy too. And when I see how you light up around me, I know Kira feels the same joy. Kira nodded enthusiastically. Where I come from, we say that a rope with 3 strands is stronger than one with 2. We've all been working together for months now. We laugh together, solve problems together, take care of each other. Why shouldn't we build a life together? David felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. So we're really doing this, all 3 of us, as a family, if that's what you want, Zara said, reaching across the table to take his hand. It's what I want more than anything, David replied, taking Kira's hand with his free one. The next step was telling Dr. Reynolds and the colony council. David had expected resistance, maybe even disapproval. Instead, Dr. Reynolds looked relieved. Actually, this could be exactly what the colony needs, she said. We've had other requests for multi-partner arrangements, but nobody wanted to be the first to try it. If you 3 can make it work, it might open up possibilities for others. The colony council meeting was more formal, but the response was positive. Commander Torres pointed out that the 3 of them had already proven they could work together under pressure during the pirate attack. The efficiency expert noted that their combined skills made them more valuable to the colony than they would be separately. The only question is the ceremony, said Council Leader Martinez. We'll need to create a new type of bonding ritual that honors all 3 cultures involved. Planning the ceremony took several weeks. Zara wanted to include Zephyrian traditions about connecting minds and sharing emotions. Kira insisted on Valorian customs that emphasized strength, loyalty, and practical partnership. David contributed human elements about making promises and building a future together. The result was unlike anything the colony had ever seen. The ceremony took place in the main plaza, with representatives from all 3 species attending. David, Zara, and Kira each spoke vows in their own language. Then together in the common language they all shared. "I promise to respect your unique gifts and help you grow into who you're meant to be," David said. Looking at both women, "I promise to share my thoughts and feelings openly, and to support your dreams as my own," Zara added. "I promise to stand by you in difficult times and celebrate with you in good times," Kira concluded. Together, they planted a tree in the colony's central garden, its roots intertwining just as their lives were doing. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone watching. After the ceremony, they moved into their shared home. David had worried about the practical details of three people living together, but they fell into routines that felt natural. Zara tended her plants in the garden room each morning, filling the house with beautiful scents and soft light. Kira worked on her projects in the workshop, often with David helping her solve engineering problems. Evenings were spent together, sharing meals and stories and planning their future. The arrangement worked better than David had dared to hope. When he had a bad day at work, both women were there to support him in their own ways. When Zara felt overwhelmed by the emotions she picked up from other colonists, David and Kira would help her find peace. When Kira pushed herself too hard on difficult projects, David and Zara would remind her to rest and take care of herself. 6 months after the ceremony, David received a message from his old friend Tom back on Earth. Tom had tracked him down through official channels. Curious about whether David was still alive and happy, David sat down to write a response, trying to find words to explain his new life. How could he describe waking up each morning in a beautiful home with two people who loved him? How could he explain the satisfaction of building something meaningful with his hands, while helping different species learn to work together? How could he convey the peace of belonging somewhere, truly belonging, for the first time in his life? In the end, he kept it simple. "I'm happy, Tom, happier than I ever thought possible. I found a place where I fit, where my skills matter, where I'm part of something bigger than myself. I found love, friendship, and purpose all in one place. I found home." As David finished writing the message, Zara and Kira came home from their respective jobs. Zara had discovered a new species of plant that might help improve the colony's air filtration system. Kira had successfully repaired a critical water pump that everyone else had given up on. Both were excited to share their achievements with him. They prepared dinner together, each contributing their own skills and preferences to the meal. As they ate, they made plans for the weekend. There was a new section of the colony being built, and David's team would be working on the foundation. Zara wanted to study the soil composition to see what plants might thrive there. Kira was designing improved lighting systems for the new buildings. Everything they did together, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because together, they were stronger, happier, and more complete than any of them had been alone. That night, as David lay in bed with the gas giant casting colorful light through the windows, he thought about the desperate man who had applied for this program almost a year ago. That person felt like a stranger now. The old David had been broken, lonely, and afraid. This David was whole, loved, and ready for whatever challenges the future might bring. He'd come to New Eden Colony looking for a job and a home. Instead, he found a family, a purpose, and a version of himself he never knew existed. Sometimes the best journeys were the ones that took you somewhere completely unexpected. As he drifted off to sleep, David smiled. Tomorrow would bring new projects, new challenges, and new opportunities to build something amazing with the people he loved. He couldn't wait to see what they would create together.